Before the Bible was the Bible, before Europe made its canon, before church politics shaped Scripture, there was an older story, a forgotten library, and one nation, Ethiopia, preserved what the rest of the world removed. Today, we uncover why Europe took certain books out of the Bible and why Ethiopia refused to let them die. Family, welcome back to Hope Alive. Today we step into a story far older than the church buildings we see, older than European Christianity, older than Catholic councils, older than Protestant theology. A story rooted in the earliest centuries of the faith, when Scripture was still being copied by hand, and when believers relied on a wider library of sacred writings than most Christians know today. There is a quiet mystery that has followed the church for 2,000 years. History shows that different Christian communities preserve different books, but one nation, a nation often overlooked by the Western world, safeguarded a canon unlike any on earth. Ethiopia, one of the first Christian kingdoms in history, preserved texts that Europe later removed. Books like Enoch, Jubilees, Meccabayan, and the Ascension of Isaiah survived only because this ancient African kingdom kept them alive. We're not here for controversy. We're here for clarity. We're not here for speculation. We're here for history. And we're not here to attack Europe. We are here to understand how politics, theology, language, and culture shaped the modern Bible, while Ethiopia maintained a much older tradition untouched by later revisions. So today we ask two deep questions. Why did Europe remove certain books from the Bible? And why did Ethiopia, alone among nations, preserve them unchanged for more than 1,000 years? Get ready, because once you understand this history, you will never see the Bible the same way again.
To understand why Ethiopia's canon is so unique, you must first understand the origins of its faith. Christianity reached Ethiopia not in the Middle Ages, not during European missions, but in the Book of Acts. When the Ethiopian royal official met Philip, the gospel entered Africa before it ever reached Rome, France, Germany, or England. That early foundation produced a Christian tradition untouched by later European influence. The Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church uses a canon of 81 books, the broadest and most ancient Christian canon still in use. It includes texts that disappeared elsewhere, not because Ethiopia added them, but because Ethiopia never removed them. Books like Enoch, a foundational Jewish text quoted in the New Testament; Jubilees, which preserves ancient Hebrew traditions; 1, 2, and 3 Meccabayan, completely different from the European Maccabees; the Shepherd of Hermas, widely read by early Christians; the Book of Joseph ben Jurion, the Ascension of Isaiah. These works were part of early Christian tradition long before church debates narrowed the Bible in Europe. Why did Ethiopia preserve them? Because Ethiopia embraced Christianity early, canonized scriptures independently, and never adopted the decisions of Roman councils like Hippo, 393 AD, or Carthage, 397 AD. Ethiopia's canon was shaped by Apostolic-era Christianity, the Septuagint, ancient Hebrew traditions, and early church usage. While Europe spent centuries arguing over what should or shouldn't be scripture, Ethiopia simply kept reading what the earliest believers read. In essence, Ethiopia didn't preserve extra books, it preserved the original library.
In Europe, the Bible we see today was not shaped in one moment. It was shaped by centuries of theological battles, political decisions, and linguistic debates. Before the 1500s, the European Bible, especially in Catholic tradition, included books now called deuterocanonical or Apocrypha. These books were widely accepted in the early church and were included in the Greek Septuagint, the Bible most Christians used for centuries. So what changed? The Protestant Reformation. Martin Luther questioned books like Tobit, Judith, Wisdom, Sirach, Baruch, 1 and 2 Maccabees, additions to Esther and Daniel. Luther argued these books did not fit. His theological reforms, his emphasis on the Hebrew canon, his views on salvation, and his desire to simplify doctrine. Some books contradicted his new teachings, especially Maccabees, which supports prayer for the dead, a Catholic teaching Luther opposed. Although Luther initially included these books in an Apocrypha section, later Protestant groups removed them completely. By 1885, the King James Bible eliminated them entirely. Catholics kept them. Orthodox churches kept even more. But Protestants removed them not because they were historically false, but because they were theologically inconvenient. Meanwhile, Ethiopia never participated in these European religious debates. Their canon existed 1,000 years earlier and remained untouched by Reformation politics. So while Europe trimmed its Bible, Ethiopia preserved the ancient one. To understand why the canons differ, you must understand the sources behind them. Europe eventually built its Old Testament on the Masoretic text, a Hebrew manuscript tradition compiled between the 6th and 10th centuries AD by Jewish scribes known as the Masoretes. This text is valuable, but it is not the oldest. Before the Masoretic text existed, the Jewish world used the Septuagint, Greek Old Testament, older Hebrew manuscripts now lost, and writings referenced by early Christians and apostles. The Septuagint contained books Europe later removed, but Ethiopia continued using it. Ethiopia also relied on ancient Jewish traditions preserved in East Africa, early Christian writings accepted in the first centuries, and texts that circulated widely before later European edits. This explains why books such as Enoch, Jubilees, and Meccabayan survived in Ethiopia but vanished elsewhere. The Masoretic text was shaped after Christianity emerged and reflected rabbinic Jewish decisions. Many books accepted by early Christians were excluded. Europe aligned its canon with this later Hebrew tradition. Ethiopia aligned its canon with the older, pre-rabbinic tradition. That means Ethiopia preserved writings rooted in ancient Judaism, the same Judaism of Jesus, the apostles, and the early church. In short, Europe built its Bible from a later Jewish manuscript tradition. Ethiopia built its Bible from the earliest Christian and Jewish traditions. This is why Ethiopia's Bible feels older, because it is older. If there is one book that reveals the entire story of preservation versus removal, it is the Book of Enoch. Enoch was one of the most influential Jewish writings during the Second Temple era. It shaped early Christian theology, influenced the Apostolic worldview, and was so respected that the New Testament quotes it directly in Jude 1:14 through 15. But Europe rejected it. Why? 1. Rabbinic Judaism did not include it. After the destruction of the Second Temple, Jewish leaders narrowed their scripture and excluded Enoch. 2. It contains supernatural content, stories of angels, the Watchers, the origin of demons, and the Nephilim. Later theologians considered this too mystical or controversial. 3. Its influence on early Christianity was strong, supporting angelology and spiritual warfare, themes Europeans found theologically uncomfortable. 4. It did not survive in Hebrew. The only full copy existed in Ethiopia in Ge'ez. Europe eventually dismissed the book as non-canonical, not because it was false, but because it didn't fit later doctrinal frameworks. But Ethiopia preserved it because it was used by the earliest Christians, it aligned with ancient Jewish beliefs, It had been part of Ethiopian tradition for centuries, and the early church fathers referenced it without hesitation. So while Europe abandoned Enoch, Ethiopia became the last guardian of a text once treasured by the early church. Today, scholars worldwide recognize that Ethiopia preserved something the world forgot. One of the most important reasons Ethiopia preserved a different canon is independence. Ethiopia is one of the only Christian civilizations that developed its faith without being controlled by Rome, Byzantium, or European colonizers. From the 4th century onward, Ethiopia embraced Christianity as a national faith, building monasteries, preserving manuscripts, and translating ancient writings into Ge'ez. Unlike Europe, which passed through Greek influence, Roman control, medieval politics, and the Reformation, Ethiopia carved its own path. Ethiopia was not shaped by Roman councils like Hippo or Carthage, the Catholic Orthodox split, medieval European theology, or Protestant reforms. Instead, it preserved ancient Jewish influences through contact with early Jews in Ethiopia, early Apostolic Christianity, ancient manuscripts saved in isolated monasteries, and the oldest continuous Christian liturgical tradition in the world. This independence meant no outside power could force Ethiopia to alter its canon. While Europe rewrote, removed, debated, and redefined scripture, Ethiopia simply kept the tradition it had always followed. In the mountains and monasteries of Lalibela, Aksum, and Tigray, monks copied and recopied ancient texts that did not survive anywhere else in the world. This is why Ethiopia has the oldest surviving copies of Enoch, ancient texts not found in Europe, and a biblical canon untouched by political agendas. Because Ethiopia never bent to foreign religious authority, it remains the final witness to what early Christianity looked like before the world changed it.
The differences between the European Bible and the Ethiopian Bible are not about truth versus falsehood. They're about theological priorities versus historical continuity. Europe removed books for theological reasons. Protestant reformers wanted a Bible aligned with their doctrines, a return to the Hebrew canon, even though the Hebrew canon itself was a later decision. A simplified set of scriptures that minimized supernatural writings. A canon that supported new interpretations of salvation, authority, and tradition. Books that contradicted these views were questioned, minimized, or removed. Some books were removed because they mentioned angels, demons, and spiritual realms in detail. They supported Catholic practices. They contained ancient Jewish ideas no longer accepted by Rabbinic Judaism, or that they were not found in the Masoretic text. Ethiopia preserved books for historical reasons. Ethiopia's goal was not theological reform, it was preservation. Their canon reflects early Christian usage, ancient Jewish traditions, writings valued by the first believers, and a Bible that predates European debates. Thus, Europe streamlined its Bible. Ethiopia safeguarded its heritage. Europe wanted consistency. Ethiopia wanted completeness. Europe trusted later manuscripts. Ethiopia trusted earlier traditions. One removed, one preserved. And today, the oldest and widest biblical canon still exists, not in a Western capital, but in the highlands of Ethiopia.
Family, as we close today's teaching, I want you to hear this with your spirit. Truth does not disappear because the world ignores it. Truth survives because God plants it where the proud do not look. For centuries, people wondered how Ethiopia, a nation far from Europe's debates and councils, ended up holding the oldest and most complete biblical canon on earth. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't luck. It was preservation, divine preservation. While empires rose and fell, while kings rewrote histories, while councils argued over what should stay and what should go, while Europe narrowed scripture to fit theological battles, Ethiopia remained a guardian, a keeper of ancient light, a preserver of forgotten truth. This should humble us, because sometimes God hides his treasures in places the world dismisses. Sometimes he entrusts revelation to people who were overlooked by the powerful. And sometimes the oldest answers are found in the places the world thought were the least important. Tonight, I pray that this teaching didn't just expand your knowledge, but awakened a hunger, a desire to seek the roots of your faith, not the versions shaped by politics, power, or convenience. Family, the Bible you hold is beautiful and powerful, but understanding its journey gives you depth. It gives you discernment. It brings you closer to the early believers who walked this path before any council or denomination existed. Guard the truth. Seek the deep things of God, and honor the ancient paths. If this teaching blessed you, if it opened your eyes, if it ignited something in your spirit, do this. Like this video. Push the message farther than the algorithm wants it to go. Comment below. Truth prevails. Let the world see that revelation still matters. Subscribe to Hope Alive, where faith meets history, where revelation meets depth, and where the forgotten becomes remembered. And if you want a part 2, where we break down the Book of Enoch, the Book of Jubilees, and the mystery of Meccabayan, just type Enoch next. Family, until we meet again, stay grounded, stay watchful, stay hungry for truth. And remember, God is restoring ancient paths in this generation. Shalom.